Hello, Army of Light, Earth Division, the boots on the ground. It's Shawna L. Francis. Today is September 5th, 2023. It's already September, well into September. It's the weekly briefing, and I want to thank everybody from the bottom of my heart for sharing in this journey together as a collective, for doing all the hard work here as a light worker, as a way shower. I know this is not an easy path. Today we have some beautiful words of wisdom from Racer, and I thought I'd also share a few paragraphs of what came through today from Melchizedek for the book, talking more about the early negative reptilians on the earth that started in Lemuria. So I had talked about that, I want to say eight or 9 months ago. The GFL came through and talked about the early reptilians on the planet and all that good stuff. So learn some more things they're kind of yucky, you know, but things that we need to know. These are things we need to know. So, and I wanted to just spend just a few minutes first off talking about this new the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023 that was just signed into, well, was approved by the House and the Senate here in July. And then eventually it'll be signed into law. It was part of the bigger National Defense Act that they have to do every fiscal year, every couple of years, whatever that is. So it's kind of one of these these little adjunct things that they throw in and hope it all gets approved. So this did, the UAP Disclosure Act got approved. I'm just curious if you guys are following what's going on at this level, kind of, you know, what's going on in the mainstream news with the UAP, UFO, alien stuff. I've collected just a few things I want to go over, just because I think it's kind of interesting, and we'll see where this goes. So UAPs, you know, this is the government's new acronym for the unidentified anomalous phenomena, formerly known as UFO, so UAP, and it's a little bit more broad, I think, captures a few more things in that. And this is a disclosure act that's been approved, and they've earmarked just $20 million for this. But what's interesting about this act is the government basically is saying, I don't care who you are or where you are, if you have evidence or information about UAPs, we want you to disclose it to us. Everything's considered to be unclassified unless you can prove to us why it would be classified. And so this is this act is basically set up to collect all this information and categorize it. So I feel like that's kind of as far as it goes, but it's better than nothing, you know, with Grush coming forward and the Senate hearings that happened this summer. You know, I think these guys are just really getting a sense for just how much has been kept hidden from the quote-unquote leaders of our country here in the United States. You know, the Congress has really no idea, even the president to some degree, right? And if you believe everything that you read, you know, that there's so much going on behind the scenes, shadow government, the deep state, the negative reptilian regime, everybody that's kind of really pulling the purse strings, really in charge, running these special space programs, really without any of the knowledge of folks who are kind of our day-to-day leaders, our elected officials and that kind of thing. So I think this is starting to get at that. I think it's exciting, even though it's not huge, but it's a little bit of something. And the Pentagon just launched a website. It's like AARO, and I can't remember what that stands for, but the Pentagon is kind of using this as a public-facing forum for posting kind of videos and information about UAPs that are coming through. So it's really interesting. And in the little bit of research that I was doing on this act, you know, NASA for so long was just always taking the hard line, like there are no UFOs, there are no aliens, there's no, actual evidence of any of this, but they seem to just in the recent few months now are changing their tune and are talking more about collecting evidence, helping the government understand what's really out there. But you know, so the federal government shall exercise eminent domain over any and all recovered technologies of unknown origin and biological evidence of non-human intelligence that may be controlled by private persons or entities in the interests of the public good. eminent domain. They can seize anything that the government feels like they should seize, and that's going to be considered declassified unless somebody can prove why it needs to be classified. It's also, this law also protects whistleblowers, which is really huge. I thought that was great. I also want, and I'll put my sources here in the description for this. And I like this here. The reports of UAP sightings from pilots, citizens, and law enforcement have increased dramatically in recent years to more than 100 reports a month in the U.S. alone. 100 reports a month in the U.S. alone. And with the commercialization of drones, this is not at all surprising. In recent years, there's been an increased effort on the part of the U.S. government to study and document UAP sightings more systematically. So this is kind of what this Disclosure Act is doing. So it's about the records, about collecting these records. And somebody else had noted here, it's important to note that there's another disclosure timeline that few are paying attention to, and that's the deadline for public companies to report material events within 4 business days of occurrence to the SEC and shareholders. So, and then they continue here. The conversations internally at publicly traded major aerospace defense contractors right now must be intense. Their potentially most valuable technological assets derived from non-human intelligence are in jeopardy of being taken through eminent domain. So I think this is getting interesting. If not anything else, I find it interesting to kind of follow this. Yeah, and again, let us know in the comments how much you're paying attention to these things, if you are at all. I'm just curious. All right, I'm going to move on to Mr. Racer. So basically today, I just thrown out, does anybody want to say anything to the Army of Light Earth Division, to our constituents here? And Racer came forward, and here's what he had to say. I'm like, hello, how are you? I'm doing well, how are you? He said, we're making great progress over here. Great progress. It's beautiful to be a part of this aspect of the fight. It's quite rewarding, and it's also quite comforting to feel and to know the larger picture of what's going on. As Racer and embodiment on a ship in the active battle state, I had a very limited view of how my actions impacted the whole. And just a sidebar, guys, if you're new to my channel, Racer was an 8D Arcturian who came forward here earlier this year, and we have active battles going on right now between the GFL, the Galactic Federation of Light, and their allies, and the negative reptilians and their allies. So this has been a brutal war going on for, I think, 5 months now. I'd have to go back and look. It's been a while. And massive casualties, and Racer, unfortunately, was one of those casualties. And but the great news for us is that he decided, while on the other side, not in embodiment, that he would join us as one of our guides. So it's really quite incredible, and it's so humbling to be able to work with these beings like this. I have to pinch myself. I'm still in awe over all of this, but I'll continue here with what Racer had to say. Here from this side, I am seeing the situation and more of its totality, and from this vantage point, dear ones, I see that there is such incredible beauty and the growth of love that is buoying so many beings right now, not only on Earth, but far-reaching into the cosmos. We are all being buoyed up, dear ones, with this love energy. It's palpable, it's tangible, it's very real. You each do what you can to bring a sense of peace, a sense of acceptance. These, of course, begin first with the self, a sense of peace within, a sense of acceptance of who and what you are, of all things, of all aspects of you. Then once these things are established within, you're able to radiate this out and support the larger collective's energetic frequencies, so then that others may have the internal peace and that internal acceptance. Everything is connected, Shawna. Everything is shared. Truly, everything is one. And this plays out in unexpected ways, especially to those such as yourself who've come to a planet having an experience of forgetting all forgetting the unity of all things. And he continues here. This collective amnesia, though, dear one, is weakening. The collective amnesia is weakening, he says. The great awakening is upon us. Trust in this, dear ones. Trust in these feelings. Even if no one else in your worlds understands or can't even begin to comprehend what it is we talk about, I ask that you trust these feelings of love, the feelings of unity, the feelings of peace and acceptance. Allow these aspects of you to rise to the top, to be your focus, to lead you through this darkness into the light. He says here, this is not the same as trying to convince others about your understanding of the world. Your influence, your impact, and your service comes with the peace and the acceptance and the self-love that's inherent within each of you. It comes via frequency. It comes via unconditional love. And in this way, all other beings are honored, no matter their belief system, no matter their behaviors or their actions. There's no forcing or pleading or frustration. There's just knowing. And this is what helps lift an entire civilization. As you each walk your individual paths of light, you may stub your toe from time to time. You may get distracted from time to time. Or you may find that you are feeling lost on this path. You stop and you look around and you look at where you've come from. You look to the left and you look to the right. You look ahead. And you found yourself in a very foreign place, in a foreign land. Your heart starts racing, maybe with a bit of panic. And the mind tries to understand where you've ended up and how you've ended up here. This new place feels different because it is different. It feels unfamiliar because it is unfamiliar, at least on some level. In these times, dear ones, when you find yourself in that moment, I invite you to take a few really deep breaths. Close your eyes. Feel your feet beneath you. Feel the solidness of the ground that holds you. Tip your head up to the sky above you and put your attention on your heart space and feel into these words. I am at peace. I accept what is. I am a way shower. And the difficulties I might perceive in this moment with this path will help clear the way for the generations who will follow in my footsteps. I help to prepare this field for light, and the illumination from this light brings into our collective conscious awareness the knowing and the remembering of our divinity, the knowing and the remembering of our unity. And through this unity, I could never be alone on this path. I am fully loved, I am fully protected, and I am fully supported on this journey. And then he said, Shawna, this concludes what I want to share today with all of you. Thank you so much, dear one, for allowing me this opportunity to connect in this way with all of our constituents, the Army of Light Earth Division. It's been an absolute honor. And of course, I thanked him. Yeah, guys, I love the part where he's saying, this new place feels different because it is different. This place feels unfamiliar because it is unfamiliar, at least on some level. Strange noise. Thought it might be the cat, but the cat's downstairs. And then those nice affirmations. So I will put these words in the description below so you'll have them. Okay. Moving on, kind of a little bit more darker stuff that came through today with the book. So it was really only day 20. So I'm doing this 4 or 5 times a week or so. Some days are really long, some days are just a few paragraphs. It's going really well. Thanks again, everybody, for all your beautiful comments about the day 1 channeling that came through in the newsletter. I appreciate that. I appreciate it so much. Okay. Day 20. Where do I want to start here? Melchizedek is just beginning to build kind of an understanding of the early negative reptilians that were on Lemuria at the same time that humans were seeded. And remember, guys, if you've been with me for a few months, 8 months, 8 months ago or so, we talked a lot about Lemuria and about these early reptilians, and that this was really it was a big experiment to put these 2 species together on one planet. Truly, that's the word they use, is this was a grand experiment. They said, how might this go? Each species with their own set of gifts, their unique ways of viewing themselves and viewing the world around them, unique ideas on how to survive and how to thrive. The negative reptilians with their cunning, and the humans with their emotions. They were very different in fundamental ways. Life for the negative reptilian in those early years revolved around scouting their environment, watching the seasons and the weather patterns, understanding and even inventorying the natural resources that would help them survive. And then they talk about how the hierarchy started to really take a foothold in the early civilization of these reptilians on the planet. I mean, I'm calling them negative reptilians, but you know, they're just doing their thing. This is what they know. This is how their DNA is set up. And a lot of these things we can still see that influence today, and they talk about this. They said that a loose community hierarchy began to form early on in the species development. This revolved around the reptilians' strength, their size and intelligence, but most importantly, their ruthlessness, their assertiveness, and their confidence. As the most powerful members of the species rose in the ranks, their societal infrastructure became more solidified, and soon the species became extremely hierarchical. All right. They said males dominated in this hierarchy. The females played very important roles in these societies, but they had no voice and no say in those responsibilities. The deep subjugation of females in their culture have been carried over to humanity over the millennia. Through the covert influence of the negative reptilians, inequality between men and women and the subjugation and suppression of women did not originate with humanity. We've heard this before, so it's nice to have them come back around and just reiterate this. Last paragraph here. The early negative reptilians had homes and reared children who were raised in a militaristic style. The male children were groomed from birth to develop their strength, their intelligence, and their ruthlessness. The major tenets that drove the power structure in those times. Young male reptilians who were deemed to not be strong enough or smart enough, or didn't show promise of being a leader at some point in the future, were killed. Females needed to display qualities of submissiveness, physical strength, and they also needed to be physically attractive according to their standards. Wow. Females who were deemed to not meet these criteria were used as military targets and training for the young males. These females were tormented, raped, and subjugated to all forms of torture and mutilation in order to help harden and develop the ruthlessness within the young males. And that's where that stopped today. It's just so eye-opening to understand that you know, these kinds of just prehistoric, older, kind of super archaic ways of having a society run are still kind of in play today. And what I like to hear is that, you know, and they've said this many times before, a lot of these things are not inherently human. You know, we kind of just, oh, that's just how we are. But no, you know, the way that we are in our society and how we interplay with each other, how we behave with each other, how we feel about each other, you know, kind of this divisiveness that's here, the hierarchical structures, the focus on beauty, you know, these things are coming from a negative reptilian influence according to Melchizedek here. So just fascinating, really fascinating. All right, team, so I'm going to leave it with this today. As always, I love you and I appreciate you so much. Hope you're all taking care, enjoying the last bits of summer if you're on that side of the world. All right, team, I love you and I will see you all next week. Mwah.